My interest, largely for this podcast that I'm creating, is to have conscious conversations with my friends and people that I meet. And I am very interested, kind of my whole life, I've been interested in paths to wholeness, and
Mhm.
then these systems of wholeness that are out there, but we've often fragmented them in our culture. So we even take paths of wholeness and we don't make them whole anymore. Like holistic medicine or yoga. Yoga is just focused on the physical body these days, and all the rest of yoga has been like
Mhm.
thrown away, or it's just parsed out and it's not well integrated. And so the things that will bring us back to a sense of wholeness within ourselves, within our physical body, our mental body, emotional body, all of them, and the journey back to the self, to consciousness, to the heart, to the soul, whatever we want to call it. That journey and that path. I'm very curious of people's experiences into touching into that space. And so, as I'm thinking about that, then I'm thinking about the things that have made such a big impact in my life. And one of them was the breath work and rebirthing. So I'm bringing my friend Aaron Overstreet on, who is a master at rebirthing breathwork and has been doing it for a long time. That to tell people about it, and I'm really curious about your experiences with it and your experiences different from other things you've done, and how that plays into this kind of integrated self and consciousness, and what we can get from that.
That's a
So.
great topic. Yeah, I love that. And I like to look at things that way holistically because it's not just one thing that's going to help us and heal us. It's bringing together all the tools. And so, yeah, so for 35 years, been practicing rebirthing, and that's been my primary focus and like my specialty. Recently, I've been getting into a deeper study of pranayama, one of the limbs of yoga. Not not just the asanas, but the pranayama aspect. And I've been studying prana, the tattvas, the prana vayus, and
Mhm.
I've been loving that because I get to see how rebirthing is working with a specific form of prana, a specific tattva. And as I've been exploring all these other forms of pranayama, seeing that it's so like specialized. It's such a science, as you
Mhm.
know, as a yoga instructor, and it's complex, but there's a way in that's very simple with looking at like the elements, the tattvas as the elements, and
Mhm.
then breathing practices that work with those tattvas. Um,
So you're thinking, sorry, I don't,
yeah.
you're thinking that certain breathwork techniques will work with different tattvas.
Hmm.
And the tattvas, if people don't know what that is like earth, air, fire, water, ether. Are you going beyond that? Are you going into other, like the 36
I
tattvas,
mean,
or like largely
recognizing
those?
there's kind of like spirit consciousness and then the five elements,
Okay.
but the practical way to work is with the five tattvas. Or yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah.
All right. So I want to know more.
For example, rebirthing. Um, for people that don't know, rebirthing is the original form of what we call these days connected breathing. And it's an interesting time these days for breathwork because there's so much connected breathing out there. There's holotropic, breath wave, 9D, liberation, transformational, the list goes on. And these are all branches off of rebirthing. And what a lot of these have done have shifted it or changed it a little bit. And what makes rebirthing kind of unique is, along with being the original form, it's also the focus is on relaxation. And the idea is that instead of some of them will take you into a very like strong mouth breathing experience where you get a lot of sensations, it's very intense, and then you work your way out of it, and get value from that. Where rebirthing is about deep relaxation to the point where then the things in your system that are ready to move have the space to move. The oxygen and the prana can move in because there's no contraction, it's relaxation. And so, what I've been realizing is the way rebirthing moves with the connected breathing is it's also called circular breathing. And in the tattvas, there's akasha, which is ether, which gives birth to Vayu, which is air, which is represented by the circle and movement, locomotion. And then it also shows up in the lungs and the hands. So all those things, like in rebirthing, as you probably experienced, you get tetany sometimes, it's tingling in the hands. The breath is a circle. And so what I've been realizing is that tattva of Vayu is the dominant tattva in rebirthing, which creates movement. That means you're moving your nervous system into regulation, and things move out of the way along the path. So stuck emotions move out of the way, move into awareness, things from the unconscious move into conscious. So it's really all about movement. And a key factor is relaxation. So that's kind of what makes rebirthing a little different than a lot of these branches that people are experiencing that are getting really popular, and it's great. There's a lot of connected breathing that's really popular right now, and I like to go to these events because they're really fun to amp up and like really go for it. But what I'm seeing also is that for some people, they don't know what they're getting into, and it's too much.
Yeah, that happened to a client of mine. He's just pretty much had a nervous breakdown from some holotropic breath work.
Yeah.
And then even his physical body just went into major rejection of it with all these physical ailments that happened afterwards.
Yeah, and I part of what I'm doing these days is really kind of trying to educate people to know what they're getting into, because I've seen that where at the end of a thing where they say, okay, breathe for 1 hour really strong and fast, and there's still people crying, shaking, laughing, completely confused as to what happened. They haven't integrated it. So just trying to let people know that if you're high sensation seeking and you like a big, strong experience and you want to go for it, those events are good. But if you want relaxation and to have maybe more time to integrate it, the rebirthing is really the way to go. And that can also be done in groups. Ideally, one-on-one for any breathwork practice is more effective. But yeah, so people should know that if they're going to a connected breathing event, to know what they're kind of signing up for, because that's a good example of your client.
Yeah, I think they were doing private sessions, but still it was maybe a little too much. That's another thing I would like to talk to you a bit more about, is this integration, because I feel like there is a lot of things these days that people are seeking that are these like wowie powie moments, like ayahuasca, plant medicine,
Wim Hof.
Wim Hof. That was exactly what I was going to say right then and there. Wim Hof, like these just really shock your system. And I think it happens so fast that they come out of it, they don't know, they have not integrated. They had a high experience, but not understanding how they got there, not taking the actual footsteps to get there, but being like teleported and then teleported back, and then, not really having integrated it to where it's become who you are now, so there's this dichotomy of imbalance that occurs. And they may have the lingo and they may have the experience, but they can't, they're not that experience becoming them.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that's how I put it too, is that integration goes from, I feel good, well, I am good, I am goodness. It's if you take that time to integrate, it soaks into who you are. And that's, yeah, you get that.
Yeah. So, and then you've had some of these experiences also into some of those realms of those big, big experiences using those techniques. What would you say is, your journey through that? Like you've been there and you kind of came back to rebirthing, or do you still dabble in some of those other things?
I have a unique life. I grew up in a family where my dad was a psychic. My grandpa was a healer, could heal people with hands-on healing. My mom was an artist, so very like bohemian healer, spiritual, new age. So the dinner time table talk was crazy, like things that were just like really out there to some people, but it was very normal to me.
I love it.
So at an early age, I was working with affirmations, I was meditating, I was reading spiritual books. And then I got into psychedelics, and that, I was really interested in altered states. So as a teenager, I was playing with them with LSD and mushrooms. And then when I was 21, my dad randomly said, or not so random, I had just read Autobiography of a Yogi. And when I read about Babaji, I made this strong intention of, I want something like that. I want a teacher. And Babaji is the energy behind Rebirthing. He gave Rebirthing to Leonard Orr, the founder. And so I made this intention, I want something like that. And then about a week later, my dad said, you want to try this thing I know how to do called Rebirthing? So my dad had studied with Leonard in, around 79, 80, and had really never mentioned it. And then just randomly, it was like, you want to try it? So I did a session with my dad, and it was the biggest experience I've ever had of a natural altered state, and then feeling so completely blissed out afterwards. And the first thing I said when I opened my eyes was, this is better than drugs. I was like, oh, I can get high on my own supply. And then I was like, this is what I want to do. And so my dad informed me that there was a training center about 4 hours from where we were at. We were in Modesto, California, and Leonard owned Sierra Hot Springs at the time. It's a full-time training center. You've been there.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know that he owned it at that time. Or maybe I did, I forgot that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so within a couple weeks, I was living there and studying it and just immersed. And then that was my big, oh, you can have these experiences naturally, which was really what created Rebirthing. Was when Leonard was studying altered states naturally, it led him to the breath and to healing birth trauma. And then at the same time, Stanislaus Grof was working with LSD with birth trauma. When that became illegal, him and Leonard were friends, and Grof then picked up what Leonard was doing. So the first offshoot is holotropic of Rebirthing. Really early, holotropic broke off. And and you were speaking to integration, and that's a big part of what makes some of these other forms different, is that you just breathe for an hour. And some of them, I've even heard them say integration doesn't matter.
Or they're just having a circle at the end. Just let's do this integration circle. I'm like, that's not integration.
Yeah,
That's sharing. That's nice. But it could also be very egoic and get you trapped in another thing.
So that's one of the things Holotropic did, is they made it an hour, they added music, moved into groups, and then traditionally it's a 90-minute cycle. And having enough time, when I do groups now, I have enough time for that, so that people have the time to and then we say, you breathe until you feel complete, and you get to a point where you're like, oh, the ride's over, I'm done, I feel good. Yeah. But yeah, so can I keep going with that question? That's a fun question, because then, I dove deep into breath work. Specifically just Rebirthing. And my first maybe 10, 15 years of Rebirthing, I thought, this is the only breath work that matters. This is the only important one. And then over time, I realized, oh, it's all so valuable. And now I know hundreds of different breathing techniques. I study it deeply because the breath is so key in that wholeness aspect, that Rebirthing is specific to healing trauma, regulating the nervous system. But if you want anything else, there's breath work for it. All the yogi feats of mastery use the breath. It's so important. And so I really widened my study and my scope. And then as far as deep altered states, the yogic rhythmic breathing, which is I found in a few books, is another form of breath work that is done laying down and can put you into an amazingly delightful altered space that's different than Rebirthing, but it's one of the few other ones that's done laying down. And it's also can be done alone, where Rebirthing, you want to do it with a guide. And then there's plant medicine.
What are your thoughts still on plant medicine comparative to Rebirthing?
They both use an intelligence. So Rebirthing is a built-in mechanism in the body that uses your body's intelligence to help you feel better. that sometimes means if you say to your body, I want to feel better, your body will say, well, you need to look at this. And that's uncomfortable. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I wanted to feel better, but I feel worse. Because that intelligence is wanting you to move forward and move things out of the way so they move into awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the intelligence of the body and the breath and that tattva, that vayu tattva, that energy behind that, where I see plant medicine, the intelligence is in the plant, is the natural intelligence of Mother Earth and that specific plant carrying a specific intelligence. So in it, they both include surrender. You know, you drink the ayahuasca and you don't control where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the rebirthing session. That intelligence comes in and is working with your intention, but it's means you need to often look at things. And I think the different plant medicines have different kind of personalities, but basically they're going to make you aware of what you need to be aware of. And sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes you need to be aware that you deserve peace and you have a beautiful, relaxing experience, whether it's plant medicine or breath work, but we don't get to control when we have those experiences. So I see it as their intelligences that work with us and help us.
But rebirthing or breath work can take you there without needing to do those.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same, it can take you to the same
Mm-hmm.
places.
And that's a very common thing I hear after sessions, and is people say like, "Oh, I don't need to go to Peru." I don't,
Yeah.
And my experience was that I did breathwork, rebirthing for so long and got so comfortable with that altered state that when I did move into ayahuasca, it was easy for me. I was like, oh, I can navigate altered states and intensity, because in rebirthing, sometimes it gets very, very intense.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I was able to adapt to working with the plant medicine pretty quickly because I'd had so much experience. And it goes vice versa. When I work with clients who've done a lot of plant medicine, they can go right into the breath, into that deep altered state, and welcome the uncomfortable stuff much easier. Same thing with IFS. When people are working with parts work, with the family system parts work, and they're already accustomed to welcoming the parts and seeing them as friends, they get more out of the rebirthing. So when I went into ayahuasca, yeah, it was familiar. And the difference in the intelligence, I think it helped me get to things that I might not have been able to get to with the breath. And the breath might have helped me get to things that I couldn't with the medicine. But I felt like the medicine took me into things that were maybe deeper soul level, like Akashic record, karmic, like to a deeper place than the breath was taking me.
Interesting. Yeah, I've had many different psychedelic experiences. I mean, that was kind of my thing as a teenager. It's like acid is my drug of choice. And then it became yoga was my drug of choice. And I felt like through the experiences that I got through various different yogic practices that they were deeper and higher than what I got on any psychedelic. And then when I eventually later in life did ayahuasca, it was familiar to me too. I stepped into this land. I was like, oh yeah, I've been here before, but I also kind of felt like, yeah, I don't need this. Like it's not. It wasn't really for me. It was more like I enjoyed even though it's longer and slower of a journey, the baby steps to get there, because I was like taking a step with whatever my daily practices were, or my self-awareness being not induced by something outside of myself, that those baby steps were more integrative for me. And then, something big was just a little.
So there's sovereignty, autonomy with learning those baby steps. Then you
Yeah.
own it.
Yeah. So that was like kind of my journey and my experience with that. And I kept coming back to, for me, one of the most powerful things in all the things that I have done is the breath work, is pranayama. So.
And I think that's the way to do it with the medicine, because it's medicine. It's medicine is supposed to help us get better, and then we don't need it. And that's how I worked with it as well. My clear intention going into it was, I want to learn how to get here on my own. So there was always this homework of how to eat, how to breathe, how to live. Like the medicine was always giving me homework, and it got to the point where after about 3 or 4 years of working with it pretty regularly, just kept telling me the same thing over and over. And it was like, you're ready to graduate. You don't need me anymore. You just need to do the homework and live. I've shown you how to live. Now go do it. And there was kind of a graduating moment with it when I was like, oh, okay, I'm done. And I don't need this anymore. And there are some people who I've seen continue to use it through the years. I do think this might be a little bit of a judgment, but I do think the medicine takes a toll over time, that it can be hard on the system.
That would make sense to me. I could see that.
Physically, it's could be, if you're doing it regularly a lot, I think sometimes it can be hard on people's systems. And I know that some of the shamans I know that serve, they that's something they have to deal with, is the long-term effects.
I like how you were bringing up, like in rebirthing breathwork, in plant medicines, in various of these things. You could get it in counseling, you can get it in meditation, is this bubbling up of stuff to look at. Because we had talked a little bit before we started the podcast about how I was saying how, yoga's become fragmented, and then meditation has even become this thing, this place where you can avoid your life, just like we avoid with our cell phones and all these other things. And it's an escape. It can be an escape and avoidance, because you can sit and like focus your mind on something. Because that's what I was taught. I was like, oh, have a mantra, have a candle, have a point in your body that you're focusing on. Focus on something other than what might be coming up, right? Because you're trying to get rid of the thoughts and the mind and all of that. And not like, it wasn't taught to me, and maybe as clearly, that, oh, to sit with what's coming up, to almost engage with it. Like our mind might be on automatic pilot, but then to stop and be like, what is this? Like, what is this feeling? What is this thought? And uncover and discover it. I had a meditation teacher once later in life that was like, if stuff's not coming up, if your mind is quiet, you have a problem. Like, you want to sit for meditation and stir the pot and have your shit come up, and for you to look at it and for you to move past it,
And it speaks to the wholeness, because the stuff that's coming up is being integrated from the unconscious, the subconscious, into the conscious, creating a whole human where we're not fragmented. And we want to have the ability to focus our mind when we need to get out of monkey mind, to get out of worry, to focus on positive thoughts. But yeah, then there's that bypass of something's coming up. Like, if sometimes when in a session, if somebody's mind is looping and they let me know, like, I just keep looping on this thought, I can't get out of it. It's like, oh, well, your mind is actually trying to help you feel something. What's the theme of the thought? Is it worry? What's the feeling? Like, the mind will loop because something's bubbling up and it wants us to pay attention. And sometimes there's the space and time to give it attention. Other, we have to say, not right now. I'm driving, or I'm at the grocery store. But yeah, it gets out of balance sometimes when that focus is control. And then, yeah, not looking at what's bubbling up and wanting to integrate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for me, very much rebirthing. The sessions I had with you, it's funny, I'll tell a little personalness to the world. Every time I book a session with you, I was terrified of dying. I think I remember telling you that. I'm like, I book this, I'm excited to do it. And then it gets to the day of doing it, and I'm like, literally thinking that I will go into this breath work and I will die, And what would you say to that?
That's common.
Yeah, okay.
That I don't wanna comes up for a lot of my clients. And sometimes even I have to, like, they'll call and be like, I can't do it today. And I'll, sometimes I'll say something like, well, why don't you just come in for a sound bath? You could just lay there and I'll just play my bowls. I'm like, oh, that sounds good. And then once they're on the mat, they're like, I need to breathe. But it's part of it is because the ego's job is to keep things status quo and keep you safe. And I think sometimes in a lot of these teachings, the ego can hear like, well, we need to get rid of the ego or kill it. And so it can perceive shift as it's going to be destroyed. So what I recommend people is in those moments to let their ego know, I need you. I need you to function and move through 3D, and I need you to shift with me a little bit, but I'm not going to get rid of you. That might be the ego feeling threatened, that it might be getting killed, or, I don't think the ego death is what we're really seeking. I think it's, Shiva is a great example, that Shiva has this cobra around his neck that he wears, you know, as jewelry because it represents his ego. He's tamed his ego and works with it, and it has the ability to strike as a cobra, but he's working with it. So that's, I think, really common is that something in your system, and it couldn't, you could call it ego, but also all these protective mechanisms we built in to survive as kids. They're very helpful. If you're alive, then you owe thanks to your resistance, your shutdown, because it was there on purpose. And it doesn't mean you want to keep it, but you can appreciate it. So, anytime we feel that resistance, to say thank you to it, because it's trying to protect us, and that appreciation then creates some space to negotiate with it. And in that, when somebody has a big resistance come up, like identifying what is it protecting you from, and it might be protecting you from grief or shame, and to let it know, I actually can handle it now, and I got this, and then it will start to soften, and you can feel some of the feelings. But everything in our system is love and protection to keep us alive. And sometimes that means digestion, feelings, have to be temporarily put on hold. And so that's where, like, in the categories of trauma, acute, chronic, complex, like people who consider, that they've had complex trauma, whether they're self-diagnosed or otherwise, should be really careful when they approach rebirthing or any connected breathing, any group events. They should probably start one-on-one, because their system is already in this hyper-vigilant protective state, where it can be overwhelming, overstimulating to go into a group event. And to just know that, like, complex trauma, you want to take your time, be really cautious about the type of events you go to, so that you're not re-traumatizing yourself.
I have a couple things I would like to say and ask to that is that, so because this does bring up so much stuff, people, and we're speaking to it beautifully with the bringing up of the trauma, how can one to be aware of that, right? And then two is like, how do they, what are things you could think of for people to build in more resilience and capacity before they jump into this type of work, the work of the self?
That's a great question. And that's where, like, Wim Hof, if you're ready for Wim Hof, it will build vagal tone, because you're basically putting your system into a sympathetic nervous system response and then pulling it into parasympathetic. So if you consider that like building a muscle, when you work out and you want to build a muscle, you're actually tearing it a little bit. So you're stressing it and then letting it recover. So we can do the same thing with our nervous system. But if your muscle is weak and you try to lift a weight that's too much, you'll hurt yourself. And so building that vagal tone through things like just slow, regulated, nervous system regulation breaths, where the exhale is very slow in and out through the nose. The diaphragm is so important, having the diaphragm free and moving, because that, if you take a belly breath, you're saying to your body, I'm safe. There's no threat. So building that capacity to get back to a parasympathetic regulated nervous system through slow regulated breathing. The fun one I've been doing that I'd love to share about is called Vitalic breathing. I got this book. It was written in the 1920s by the New York City Police Department breathing instructor. You can imagine New York City in the 20s, the police department has a breathing instructor.
That's so cool.
And the opening to this book is written by the police commissioner. And it's very Jack LaLanne, like, and it's super fun to read. But what Vitalic breathing is we would call it either rabbit breath now, or I think it's transformational breath work does the 2-part inhale. So anytime we don't have the strength or capacity to get a full inhale, we can do parts, sniffs, and that helps us get more. It's like hammering a nail. A skilled carpenter can hit the nail, drive it in, but if you're new to it, you're tapping it in. So it's a way to get more on the inhale. And with Vitalic breathing, I've been doing the walking version in this book, where you're taking 3 steps. The first step, you're taking a strong sniff in. The second step, you're taking 2 sniffs. The third step, you're strongly exhaling. So it's, and then depending on what you're doing, you have a pause, which is an even count. So that's an odd count for the breath, and then an even count, so that each time you come back to the breath, you're starting with a different foot.
Wow.
If you're going upstairs, then there would be no pause. If you're going up a hill walking, you would maybe have a 2 count pause, flat ground 4 count. And it's kind of like shifting gears in a car. What it does is you're moving, you're active, you're focused completely on the breath. You can't think about anything else. So it can kind of put you into a flow state, but it builds the vagal tone because your body's active and moving, you're focused, and it's a very gentle way to build it. It's not stressing it, but that movement might be similar to a fight or flight response. I do it sometimes while running. And then with the oxygens and carbon dioxide, you're bringing in a lot of oxygen. The movement converts it into carbon dioxide using the carbohydrates to convert it. And then you're doing this strong squeeze exhale, so you're clearing the carbon dioxide and the waste material. Sometimes when we're exercising and we get tired, it's because we're not exhaling enough. The carbon dioxide is building up. We think, oh, I need more oxygen, but actually we need to be emptying our lungs. So this balances the oxygen and CO2. It tones the vagal nerve. What I've found is I do it for about 20 minutes a day when I go for a walk. And I live in Southwest, so there's these hills. When I first started, the hill from my house up to Terwilliger, usually I would, about halfway up, I'd be mouth breathing and like have to pause. Since I've been doing this, I zip right up that hill, breathing through my nose, doing this Vitalic breathing. I suggest everyone get this book. It's really fun.
What's it called again? Do you remember what the book?
Vitalic breathing.
That's just what the book is called. Okay.
And there's different, the one I have is the 1940s edition. So I think a later edition, you'll have more information. But it's really great at toning the nervous system. And I'm noticing that then as a stressful event happens, I can feel like, oh, I can meet that from a more regulated place. I might be able to stay more aware of my breath instead of my body automatically going into like an upper chest threat response breath. Hit the microphone. But there's so many different breathing techniques. That's a really fun one.
Can I say something to that too? What I think is also an interesting part of that, because when we walk, we are actually stimulating each hemisphere of the brain. It's like a bilateral kind of
bilateral
stimulation thing. So you're doing that with the breath work. I mean, I can definitely see how that would change the nervous system.
And not just the bilateral stimulation, but also the switching of the leading foot.
Yes,
like these brain exercises where you do something like this, that's good for the brain, and it turns the monkey mind off. Like there's so many benefits to this exercise. I've been loving it. When I have to admit, when I first read it, I was like, this is kind of hokey. This guy is really like, just really trying to sell his way of doing it. But he also has really good information. And I've been discovering all these old breathwork books. Another one is this 1908 book called The Law of the Rhythmic Breath, written by a female author that's a deep dive into the tattvas and yoga and alternate nostril breathing and other types of breathing. It's the only book I've ever read that explains how to do a breath hold correctly. That's something, can I share about that? Because I feel like this is a piece of information that isn't really taught. So often when we do a breath hold, whether it's Wim Hof, people end up holding their breath versus a breath hold. So a common mistake is to inhale and then hold back the exhale, clamp down on the throat, which is holding your breath. A breath hold is holding the ribs open, working with the intercostal muscles and the muscles of the diaphragm to hold it open and strengthen those muscles. I often check in with people and I'll have them do a breath hold and I'll say, okay, where did you hold? And they're like, I have no idea. And then with that awareness, they'll take another one. They'll be like, oh, I'm using my throat, which strengthens what Wilhelm Reich would have called our armoring, or did call our armoring. When we've had to hold back our voice, we create this armoring. And so we actually are strengthening that instead of strengthening the ability to open our capacity. So anytime you do a breath hold, be aware of that. And this is something that I just am so surprised that, and I've only found it in this one book from 1908. And it's only just like one little sentence in the book of when you do a breath hold the expansion open, don't hold back the exhale. But I think that's a really valuable piece of information that needs to be out there.
Yeah, I can see that. There's I'm switching on my yogic brain, right, and the yogic breathing that I've been trained in. I've experienced that, but I would say I experienced it as like if I'm taking a breath hold, I'm holding my breath, there's almost a space that's like I'm still feeling this is happening,
Yeah.
right? It's not like this is happening. It definitely is like, oh yeah, I'm just continuing to breathe even though I'm not breathing. It's like
You're
the balloon
building
just keeps
expansion,
filling.
capacity.
Yeah. And that nobody taught me that. I just experienced it. And then, but what I have been taught, and this might get into this tricky little space, is, really advanced forms of yogic pranayama, you're doing locks. So you are doing Jalandhara Bandha, Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha. You're locking it in. But even in that, there's movement. Like there's, because you're supposed to feel the apana and prana, the up and the down. And it's like, it's a pulse. It's just being hit by the walls, but not stopped.
Exactly. And like the Ujjayi breath does use that throat constriction. The, the oceanic sound from the throat. And there's time and a place for everything. But that what you said, that little bit of expansion that happens in a breath hold, that's where you bring in the earth element, the tattva, prithvi. Because in that there's a little pressure, and it's how the earth is developed and built is through the diaphragmatic breath is the water element, and then water and pressure create the earth. And that capacity of cohesion is really the element that you're working with a breath hold. And in that stretching, you're bringing in also an inner light. You get to that place where you start feeling the energy move and like the tingles. And then that's where what I've read in the teachings is you want to bring in the inner light, not go into the light. So that's where, like with Wim Hof, they'll hold until they pass out and they go into the light.
Okay.
But it's also, you're building your capacity to bring light in. So you don't want to overdo it. You want to hold, notice the tingles, the light coming in, and then a regulated exhale. I think also after a breath hold, noticing the next breath, where if you hold, set the exhale down in a restrained manner, if your body says, if it wants to gasp in, it's an indicator you're probably a little oxygen deprived and you've opened up the cells in your lungs and your body's like, yes, please give me more. If you can set that exhale down after a breath hold and feel that pause, that homeostasis place, then it's a sign that you're doing pretty well with your oxygenation.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I like the cue I often give people on the exhales is like, especially after like a fiery breath, Kapalabhati, the breath of fire, or so because there's a lot of sensation in the body, and then there's something called Brahmari, which is the humming breath, where you breathe out like sounding like a bee, right? And so there's a lot of auditory cleansing that happens with that, and then there might be some hold of the breath, and when you let it go, when you let it out, to make it like as silent as you can, because most people are like, or it's like, oh, but if I'm actually trying to make the most silent, that I can't even hear my own breath, it's exiting that slow and that quiet. Actually, when I do that, my senses really expand, especially the sense of sound.
You're
It's
slowing
just,
everything down.
yeah.
Yeah. Dropping into the moment.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's where with rebirthing, the exhale is completely passive and dropped. And I did that for so long that I didn't have the ability to have any control of my exhale. I couldn't sing. I went to go do vocal
Oh,
lessons, and the coach was like, "You can't exhale," because I, for so many years,
it's
and so the
passive.
muscles, those interior intercostal muscles that set it down, had no tone.
Wow,
I had to work
interesting.
hard to get back to being able to have a regulated exhale.
Wow, well, good thing you did all these other breathing things. Um, okay, so we talked about so the rebirthing with works with the ether and the air, and would you say then the fiery breaths or the Wim Hofs and things like that would be the
And breath of
fire
fire is obviously fire. Any kind of billows,
chilling.
anytime, yeah, you're pumping from the navel
Hmm.
is the fire element.
And then the water being like, like a full yogic breath, like a deep
Hmm.
abdominal breath.
That moves all the
Where
fluids
would
of the
the
body.
alternate nostril breathing fit
The
in?
alternate nostril is really important and should be done anytime you're doing a breathwork practice
I
to
agree.
start,
I agree.
because it balances the Ida and the Pingala.
Hmm.
And often when we do alternate nostril, what we hear is it balances your nadis. Okay, what does that mean? And it doesn't go past that.
Hmm.
So we've got like, one teaching would say 70,000 nadis, or which meridians is maybe a different perspective, but these energy currents in our body, and the three most important ones are the grounding negative polarity on the left, the active polarity on the right, and then the sushumna, the open channel that everything moves up. And for that all to be balanced, it's the negative positive polarities are important to be balanced. If you're strung out and life is stressful and you're in that positive go, 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 you lose the ability to come back into feeling grounded. So the alternate nostril balances the negative positive polarities in our body. And then I add on a visualization that I read in that 1908 book, Law of the Rhythmic Breath, where I'm visualizing the currents moving as I'm doing it. And I think with pranayama, anytime we do breath work, we're moving prana, but the conscious awareness is what makes it pranayama.
Hmm.
And so when you're consciously aware of, I'm breathing in the left nostril, the grounding energy is going down the left side of my spine. You hold, focus on the solar plexus, and then exhale out the right nostril, and then the energy goes up central channel, sushumna. Breathe in the right, energy goes down the right side of the spine. It amplifies it. And with pranayama, conscious awareness is so important. Um, and that alternate nostril, I think, is always, you want to have those left and right polarities balanced before you then start any other breath work, because it also then, for the vagal tone, that sushumna channel is the vagus nerve. And so that having that tone balanced, and you don't ever want to be doing like a breath hold if you're anxious. It's
Hmm.
gonna, that compression element is gonna increase the anxiety. Um, that's why I think box breathing is helpful, but I recommend people start with a triangle first. Inhale, exhale, pause. Those three yogic states: expansion, contraction, equilibrium, balance. Because that pause is really where the nervous system starts to shift. And then once you get regulated, bring in the hold of the box, the hold
Hmm.
after the inhale. Um, but yeah, alternate nostril. That book that Law of the Rhythmic Breath. The last chapter is actually about the rhythmic breath. The rest of it is about tattvas and prana, and so much of it is about alternate nostril and different ways to do it. What the science behind what's happening when you do it. Um, and then also, if you, it doesn't have to be alternate nostril. If you feel like, wow, I'm totally strung out, I need to get grounded, 4 breaths just in and out the left side, because
Yeah.
it's self-balancing, as
Hmm.
you know. I know
And then you
you.
could do the stimulation on the other side if you want to do,
Yeah.
like you're really depressed and you want to
Mm-hmm.
amp up, you could just do the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the system that I studied, they look at like the fiery breaths as cleansing breaths. They're
Mm-hmm.
kriyas, they're cleanses. And then, we start with the cleanses, and then we do the alternate nostril breathing, and then we do the advanced pranayama.
Yeah, so that's my practice is I do yogic complete breath, which now we call the three-part breath. So I check in with my diaphragm's free, my intercostals are free, the subclavian and scalene are there if I need them for a full breath. So I have the complete breath isn't complete depth, but complete freedom. Okay, everything's free and open. And then I do a cleansing breath, which is big inhale in, I purse my lips, and then do 4 short bursts to cleanse the lungs. And I differentiate between the breath of fire from the navel, that second chakra where we have our vitality, and the cleansing exhale, which is here. And so squeezing, and it takes time to work with it. A good exercise I just learned is to clasp your hands at your lower ribs, say hello, and then a forceful whisper. And when you do the forceful whisper, you feel these internal intercostals engage. And that for a cleansing breath, that's where I work from.
Yeah, that's what we would have been taught in Kapalabhati, the breath of fire. It should be coming from there. It's the contraction of the diaphragm, not the push of the belly that's contracting the diaphragm. It's the diaphragm. It's like a hiccup, like you're just like, "Oh, it just happened," whoop, and it's coming from that area. And then to also think of it like, like you were doing the pursed lips to do it. You could also think like if you're doing it through the nose, there's like a fly at the tip of your nose, and you can't touch the fly. So the only way to get it off is like,
I love that. So what would you say to then like a stomach vacuum where you're using those kind of side abs? I consider that also kind of a fiery when I'm doing like but
yeah,
more of a whole stomach vacuum.
we call that Bastrika. So there's Kapalabhati, the breath of fire, which is more just diaphragm, and the Bastrika is just like, it's almost like a hyperventilated breath. You only do so many of them. You do like 10 rounds or something, or 10, pumps of it, where it's like everything's so pushed out and relaxed, and like a big bellows, to the end, release, to the end, release, and you do like 10 of those. Whereas Kapalabhati, the breath of fire, Kapalabhati, you're at the diaphragm only, and so you have your whole lungs, right? And then you're just doing from the diaphragm, and then pretty soon there's no more air in there. So you're just working with and there's like tiny vacuum, but I'm not like vacuuming like the fullness of my, like the full expansion of the diaphragm to where it makes my abdomen distend. That sort of thing. Would that be kind of similar to what you're playing with or experiencing?
Somewhat, but with you mentioned maybe only doing 10 of those breaths. One of the new things I've been doing with my friend Chaz is called Prana Portal. We had Theta Portal, which is group rebirthing breathwork with music. Prana Portal, we've written and produced our own music, and we have this hour-long journey that it starts with nervous system regulation breathwork, but you're standing, you're breathing, you're dancing, you're moving, and it's very playful. We wanted to have like a balance for the seriousness of rebirthing. After we do nervous system regulation, we do cleansing breaths, and we're working with conscious control of prana. We bring in a lot of prana with the hands, and then we do 6 minutes of that billows breath with spinal movement and shoulder rotation.
Interesting.
And the intention with that is that we cleanse, we bring in prana, and then we take that fire and we build it. And then after that, we do the rabbit breath to bring that fire up into our mind. And then we that energy we've generated, that prana we've amped up, then we play with it, we dance, the rabbit breath gets really playful, people are jumping around like bunnies. It's very kid-friendly, it's super fun.
Cool.
We have one on New Year's Day at 4 p.m. just around the corner if you're interested.
Okay, I might have to make that one for our New Year's Day.
So it's interesting to hear only do 10, and we're doing like 6 minutes of it. And we start slow with the movements, and then it builds double time and double time. We caution people if they start getting lightheaded or tingly to stop. So far, it's been very energizing. What would be the caution with doing too much of that? from your perspective?
They usually go into a hyperventilative state and they pass out. You know, that's probably the main thing. It may be a little too stimulating to the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
or a little, it's like when you jump into Kundalini practices and you're not quite ready for the Kundalini practices. You can have heart palpitations and other things like that, like
And
panic attacks and things
this
like
is
that. So
also a 4 count, so it's like inhale, 4,
that's the calming probably that makes it so you
and
don't
then
get
pulling the
that.
vacuum in. So then it builds a little,
A little different, yeah.
but it's good. I appreciate your perspective and information on this because it's really valuable.
Yeah, I think you're doing it a little differently than that particular
It's
one that
not a
I'm.
fast,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is more like strong and fast,
Mm-hmm.
and you're taking that time to take that inhale in so that it's like, oh, calm nervous system, oh, strong, calm nervous
Yeah.
system, strong. So that's a
The
bit
way I
different.
see it is the breath of fire is like you're taking the billows to the fire you have and building it a little bit. Here it's like it's a bigger billows, which I think builds the fire faster. So it's like with breath of fire, what I've noticed is I feel it the next day or the next, it's like it's a daily practice and I start to feel that vitality. With this billows breath, it's more immediate, or then I feel it. But yeah, and I think also with any type of breath work that anyone does, it's self-study with cause and effect, that your teacher is your breath and your sensations. Some people taking a few deep breaths, they start feeling tingly and it's like, that's enough, you know. But yeah, my practice is the checking in, cleansing breath, and then after that cleansing breath, kind of seeing like, what do I need today? So I have this whole menu of, do I need vitality? Do I need nervous system regulation? Do I need to calm my mind? Do I want to run through my chakras with chakra breathing? Like it's fun to have this menu, and there's just so many books and videos.
I love it. I want all your whole book collection. I should look through mine too and send you pictures of what I have so you can to see if you have those. That might be interesting for you.
There's a great website called Forgotten Books where they have found all these old books of everything. So it's not just breath work, but it's like, it could be like a ship's manifest from the 1700s, but they've scanned all of this material, public domain, and then it's print on demand. So you can go onto their website and search. It's very specific. So I would search breath work, breathing, prana, different words because different titles will come up. And there's all these books from like the late 1800s, early 1900s,
Cool.
and they're available.
That's awesome. There is, so my teacher, the lineage I mostly studied from is Shivananda lineage, and the headquarters for Shivananda, they have like all the books that he's ever made, which was like hundreds of books. And some are on pranayama, some are on the mind, thought, all of that, PDF'd, all for free.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
So it's pretty cool. But I also just like having the book in my hand.
Yeah,
There's just something about
same
that.
here. I don't like to read on the screen.
Yeah. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is expansion experiences. So there's all this transformational work that happens in these practices, and they bring us back to this sense of integration. And through that, we can get kind of a glimpse into our what I call our true nature, our core self. That's not clouded. Like you get a little bit of sun that goes through that clouds, and you get to taste that experience of being one and connected to everything. And that's how I describe it. Can you describe some or one of your big experiences that you've had? Maybe
I mean,
through these things, maybe through other things.
yeah, there's breath work, plant medicine, nature is a big one for me.
But the actual experience that you had, like one of your profound experiences, if you want to share, like of what you experienced and what that came to you to be.
One of my favorite that's very memorable, that it was just spontaneous, was I was at Mount Shasta. I may have told you this story before. I was with someone I was dating. I had a Volkswagen van. We were at a campsite on Mount Shasta. We were driving up back to Portland. And I've been doing a lot of rebirthing, and this person that I was with was very open. She'd already had what we call a spontaneous rebirth just from being in my field. One night we were actually on Mount Hood, and she woke me up. She's like, I can't control my breath. She's kind of was scared, and I was like, oh, you've gone into a spontaneous field because or state spontaneous rebirth, because sometimes when someone will get into another person's field who's doing a lot of rebirthing, if they're very open, their body will be like, oh yeah, let's do that. So we already had this kind of openness, and so I'm sitting in this van, in my van. She was laying down. I think we were both meditating, and I looked to look out the front window of the van, and I couldn't see it. There was so much energy that it was like looked like a cloud, and right away I knew like, oh, something's here or somebody's here. And because of my upbringing, I knew how to kind of work with it, and so I just dropped in. I was like, hello, who's here? Right away I saw this like 4 or 5 individuals, um, and they had these like blue suits on. I was like, hello, and they said, we're here for I'll change her name for Sarah. We're not here for you, we're here for Sarah. I was like, okay, Sarah, there's some people here that want to talk to you. She's like, okay. And I could tell one of them was like, are you sure it's her? And one of them said, ask her what color our suits are. I was like, they want to know what color their suits are. Blue, like just like that. They're like, okay, it's her. And they said, tell her that we haven't forgotten about her and we miss her. I was like, okay, they just want to say they haven't forgotten about you and they miss you. And she just started bawling. She's like, oh, tell them I miss them too. Um, and that was it for her. And then they said, then we do have something for you. And I felt and kind of saw them put a ring on my head.
Wow.
I was like, okay. And then they're like, bye. So I get back to Portland. I'm working a blue collar job where I wear a baseball cap. Next day that I go back to work and put my cap on, it doesn't fit. I have to open it up in the back. My head got bigger. Like, okay, that's weird. I adjust my hat size. A few years later, I tell my dad about this experience. He says, well, that's really interesting. He tells me one time he was meditating deep in the forest, and this energetic being came to him, put a ring on his head, and made his hat size bigger.
What?
And that experience, when we have that like proof of like a physical thing happened, and
Mm-hmm.
and the proof of like that connection and her knowing that, and we it just really expands the mind that there's so much more that we don't know and don't see, and that we have. I really believe each of us has an entourage. We have helpers to be in this dense realm. That this is density. We have to have a team, and a lot of times we can feel like we're alone and not know it. But just asking and hey, is there anybody there who's got my back? There's a lot of support in the unseen, and that for me, those experiences, that was a very expansive experience because it just proved so much to me. It wasn't a story that I heard my grandpa or my dad. It was my experience. So that's a fun one I like to tell.
Yeah, and I like that it wasn't you weren't necessarily doing rebirthing. You weren't on plant medicine. You weren't doing anything to try to get an experience. An
Mm-hmm.
experience came to you. And I would say like that's like one of my biggest experiences happened that way too. I was just walking on a hiking trail, and I sat down at the river. But I did have an encounter with somebody right before it, and this person was probably the most unique individual I'd ever met in my life. And this is like you're telling, oh, we have these helpers. Well, sometimes the helpers come in actual physical
Mm-hmm.
human form in your universe. So I just happened across this person on the trail, and I was lost. And I said, where does that go? And then he gave me some philosophical answer. And I was like, that I wasn't expecting. And we ended up just talking for an hour. And I just felt like I was super energized by the conversation. And it was just, I mean, we're talking about everything consciousness, it just out of the blue on a hiking trail, and I was just everything. All I remember is him saying stuff and me going, yes, yes, that's it, yes, right. And so I was so excited. And then we parted, And I went to go sit at the river, and I sat down and I looked up and I was like, oh, it's just so pretty here. Like your normal mind would say, like, oh, this is beautiful. And then I looked down, I looked back up again, and it was like this wave that washed over me. And it was like, oh my God, the magnitude of beauty. And I was just like overwhelmed. Like if I could put an emotional thing to it, it was like so many emotions rolled into one. But if I was to like squeeze it into a word, I would say beauty. And it was like, it was connected to everything. I understood everything. It was just like, oh, I understand why we have war. Oh, I understand all the things that I would say are bad things in the world didn't seem bad. They seemed like they had their place and purpose, and it was all purposeful. And then it was just this immense magnitude of beauty that I couldn't even move. I couldn't really speak. I just sat there and just cried out of just sheer like appreciation. And then it kind of died down after about 40 minutes or so. And then I had two more events that night. It was like 10-minute event that was like all about love. And then the last event, which was like 3 hours. And all like not on drugs, not doing meditation, not doing any breath work, not doing I just went for a hike that day. But I think I got Shakti put from that person.
Well, it sounds like all your filters were removed. You just saw things purely.
It was so that. It was so that. And then, but that also, like we talk about these practices to shift us and to maybe even get us there, then there's actually having some experiences that shifted me tremendously after that. And because I was, even like when I do breath work, I'll be kind of like high for days, and even my first time ayahuasca, it was like 2 weeks of nonstop bliss. And then that experience, it was like a good 6 to 9 months of feeling like I belong. The life is just perfect. I'm okay with what is. My car tire could be flat and I wouldn't be like okay, like my house is burning. Okay, kind of that thing. And then it starts to fade a little. And this is the expansion and contraction,
Exactly. Two
concealment,
steps forward,
revelation.
one step back. And
Yeah.
that's how it goes. Is we expand and we have to contract. We haven't lost anything, but it's just like in order to expand even more, then it's like, okay, there's still stuff to look at.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
when those
We're never
expands,
cooked. We're always in the process
yeah,
of becoming.
yeah, there's nowhere to get to.
Yeah. It's just
But
layers
and
and layers.
trusting that when you have an expansive experience like that, and then it starts to fade, it's like that's okay. It's normal. A lot of times my clients will say that like, well, I lost it or I went backwards. It's like, no, you're still moving forwards. There's just still more to look at.
That is really good to remember because, yeah, it can be a little saddening,
Yeah.
when you miss that space again. It's like, oh, here I'm in this space of abundance, basically, and now I'm in the space of longing again. It's like, well, get me back to that, what did I do wrong? And
And as humans, our spectrum of joy and sorrow is so huge. It's so big what we can experience. And we're not meant to hang out on either end. I believe like we have the high, blissful, joyous experiences. But I think for me, like the goal is to be at peace, the neutral point of peace, so that if I go into a negative experience, I can be at peace with that. I can be at peace. But when we have that attachment to like it needs to be all love and light and joy all the time,
yeah, it's
it
so
can create a
unrealistic.
slingshot effect as we hold on, and then all of a sudden we're slingshotted into the other side of it. But we're human, and that means we get all of it.
Yeah, I've definitely had all of it.
And to be at peace with it. And that's, I think, part of like healing our childhood trauma is that it doesn't go away. We can't change what happened, but we can be at peace with it. That, that experience taught me something, or I'm at peace with what happened. It's not a gaping wound that's infected. It's the wound has been healed. The scar is still there and it'll always be there, but you can be at peace with it. And with all these things, these medicines we're talking about, I think can be really helpful with that. And the expanded states that we both talked to that were natural, that just were spontaneous, that's a sign of that sushumna current moving up. That as we do breath work, as we do any mindfulness meditation, we start to raise our vibration and start to have those natural like psychic abilities, expanded states. Kundalini starts to move. It's a byproduct of
Yeah.
raising your
Like
vibration.
I call it like a little signpost. It's like, okay, what I am doing is working. Like I'm on the path. This is this is just showing me. And I think there's many other signposts too, just that state that you're talking about in the middle, the peace, like more peace and contentment and all that. There's the yamas and the niyamas in yoga, where they talk about like the do's and the don'ts. It's like the 10 commandments, don't have violence, don't lie, don't steal. It's like, well, you don't have to stop yourself from doing those things. You just won't want to do those things as you get more evolved and as you work on yourself more. And then there's the yamas, which is more like the things to cultivate. It's like cultivate contentment, cultivate clarity, cultivate purity. It's like I don't have to try to make those things happen. Those are telling me when they come, it's telling me that I'm aligning. These are the
They're not
signposts. Yes. Yeah. And but it's taught one way. It's like, okay, here's the stepping stone. Make sure to sit down and try to have contentment, and instead of like, oh, when it arises, then like they're doing good. You're on the path. That's some of the perks. As these other qualities, and then you have all that. It's like I also called it like if you want a drama-free life, these things would be helpful if you have a drama-free life. So if I'm living my life in a drama-free way, I'm cultivating more of those.
And there's a big
differentiation.
Thank you. My mind's starting to get a little between drama and cathartic release in rebirthing. That emotions want to move through, and they can get big and they can get loud and strong, but drama is when they come up and we stay in them, and we act it out, we project it. So it is very cathartic often when you, even any other type of breath work, because it'll start to move emotions, and it's okay to have feelings. We want to live in a world where it's socially acceptable, but there's that difference between the feeling moving and then drama where we're like holding on to it.
We're in story land, and that's where all the projection and the judgment happens. Because it's safer to, our part of our ego probably thinks that it's safer to stay in story land because it pulls us out of feeling. It's like, oh, I could stop this feeling. I'll just sit in the spin in the story about it, and throw blame and throw judgment.
Then we're in codependence instead of that autonomy of like, well, I'm in charge of my feelings. They're healthy and appropriate, and I can express them and let them out.
Yeah. And that we're all on this path, in this journey, and it doesn't end. And there is no like, somebody's figured it all out. Like my idea for this podcast too is like, when I'm listening to podcasts, this is what I often find is there's the podcast presenter and they're interviewing somebody who's wrote a book or figured something out. This person's figured it all out. And now I'm going to interview them and they're going to tell us how they figured it all out. Opposed to like a conversation where both of you are learning, growing, and evolving, and the conversation is awakening something, and it's a process. It's the process of becoming, like we're on kind of equal footing, helping each other out, opposed to like, everything, you're the expert, don't show me what you're still working on, don't show me even like all of the things that led to the book. You show me the 3 things that led to the book. But there was this whole inner process that happened to get to that place where you're like, oh, I figured this thing out, but that's never really quite shown. It's just presented like, we're always presented that this person's got it all figured out and that we're wrong because we don't, because we got the problem. Now we need to buy their services, their thing, because we got to change, fix, and improve something of ourselves at all times.
Yeah. There's a term I learned recently called consuming leadership versus supporting leadership. Where a leader is supporting you to be your own leader versus I'm going to buy this product and get something out of it. Will I get my money's worth? And that's what I love about rebirthing is all I'm doing is helping people, showing them the little things to watch for and like, okay, I've gone down this path. Here's where the path is, but you have to walk it yourself. And then you can walk that path on your own. So the pioneer, like Leonard Orr, the founder of this work, he pioneered a path into this form of breath work, but then you're on your own on that path. He can show you here's where it is and here's where it goes, but it's your journey. And that consuming leadership, I think we get into that a lot of like, I'm going to go pay for a course and get something out of it and then, I'll be all better.
It's the old guru model too. Like we need teachers and supporters, but then we depend on them. We are like, or we put them on such a high pedestal that it kind of negates our own growth.
I read something the other day that said the guru will never teach the student something they can't get to through years of meditation. That's why sometimes the guru is like, meditate, meditate. You'll get there on your own and it'll have so much more value.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then, and through our own experience, because we can read about somebody else's experience, and they will always be at the intellectual level. Everything will always be these are going to be ideas and concepts until we experience them. And then once we have an experience, then that just becomes who we are.
Yeah,
So.
and those are helpful. Well, there's that signpost. I'm on the right path. I was told about this to look for this, but yeah, it's not going to do it for you. And that's, I mean, that's a tough thing to say to somebody. Like, you gotta do this. You don't have to do it alone, but you have to heal your trauma on your own. Not really. We co-regulate together and we support each other, but we can't heal each other's trauma. That's what we have to do ourselves, and otherwise it is victim mentality and codependency to like want somebody to fix us, and which is a healthy feeling from childhood. Our parents should have been helping us and supporting us, but if we don't get that frozen need becomes just in us, that's always wanting to be fulfilled, and we have to parent ourselves.
Yeah, and there's so much in the self-help world that I think is just like the self-relief world. Like, we're never really getting to the root. We keep cutting the weed, the dandelion greens off, but it keeps growing back because we're not taking it to that next level. Or even psychology is just staying at this level of thoughts, feelings, sensations, storyland, staying on one level of the mind, but it's not integrating all parts of ourselves. It's not getting to our soul. We're not taking it to that level. They're like save that for the church. I'm here to work with your mind. Again, it's this parts fragmentation. It's like, I'm here to work with your mind, not all of you, just the mind. And then we got the medical industry. I'm here to work with your body, but not your mind and not your heart.
And that's
there is that path to
where we started with the holistic approach, is having all of those in balance. Yeah, if you need Western medicine, use Western medicine. If you need natural medicine, if you need breath, it's and the mind is important.
Yeah, super important. Well, thank you for this.
This is super fun.
And yeah, there's a lot of gems in there. I'm going to be going back through and going, what was that website again? What was that book again? Because I'm like you, like hungry for just more growth stuff and more tools, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot out there these days. We're so lucky to live in this time right now where there's sound baths, breathwork events. There's just so much, especially where we live in Portland and Vancouver. There's so much available.
I'll link your portals that you're doing on your website. So you just you post those on your website.
Yeah, my events page is, I keep current and up to date with a lot of things coming up.
Yeah, so people are in the area, in the Portland area, and then they can reach out to you and do the work. And I highly recommend it. I'll be at one of them at some point, and some private stuff when I get my courage up again. I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's all about timing, right time, right place, right time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. This has been really delightful.